Pops, another great guest, James Mealy, runs Sequential Treasures. And folks, I don't know if you're into comic books, comic book art, fandom, or collecting, but I think you're just going to have a good time. He is a like-minded individual that I have enjoyed watching. He does interviews with comic book artists. He has a couple different channels and things that he works on. Passionate guy. And James, I can't thank you enough for spending time with me. And let's talk Sequential
My
Treasures,
pleasure.
man.
Yeah. So where do you want to go? Where do you want to start? Start at the beginning of
So,
what
so
got me
what
into
did where
comics, or what
where
got the
did
business going?
where
Where do
did
you want to
where
go?
did where did little James grow up? Let's go start at the beginning. Let's start like when did
Uh,
you get like your first comic book? Like, what's the earliest part of all
okay.
this?
Again, I recently did this on Aaron Lepresti's channel, where I do
Okay,
a
yeah,
show with him once a month. It's called Comic Art Combo. We do it the last Saturday of every month on his channel. We just did one last Saturday, and this one I did 2 months ago. It was in February. This was February's episode, and my starting of my comic thing, the starting of the comics, it's not even comics. It was a Spider-Man blanket and the Incredible Hulk with the Rage Cage from 1978. I was 4 years old
awesome.
when I got these things, and I didn't know who these characters were. I didn't know about comics or anything else. I just thought the characters were cool, and of course, I got the Hulk because the Bill Bixby show. I loved watch that growing up. I loved the Bill Bixby Hulk show, and that's where it started. The first comic I ever saw or read was Savage She-Hulk #2, which some kid had brought to school. I was in first grade at the time. This is 1980, the winter of '80. I remember it was cold, and he brought it into school and he let me check it out during class. And it was kind of awesome, but it didn't really register with me just yet. But it's interesting that that issue was the first issue with interior art by artist Mike Vosberg, who 30 years later in 2010, I would start selling Mike's art for him. So it's kind of the whole thing right there is just kind of funny how it turned out that way. But the one that got me was several years later after getting comics from like, G.I. Joe and Transformers and Star Wars over the years, just because I love the franchises, not because I love comics. I got those. And then in 1987, October of 87, I was in my freshman year of high school, in ninth grade. And my best friend was in the same class with me. We hadn't been in the same class for like two or 3 years. And this other kid was in the class with us who he had met the year before. His name was Eric, and Eric was a big time comic book lover. And he was a Marvel guy, and my friend was more a DC guy. So so we're at lunch one day, and this kid from another class comes over to our table, and him and Eric start trading comics. The way you would do, because like
Mhm.
you don't have the money to buy everything, so you trade with your friends and
Yeah.
people so you can read everything. And he ended up getting this one book in the trade that he didn't want, and he looked over at me and he's like, "Hey, yeah, I'm not really a DC fan. Do you want this?" And it was DC Comics Presents number 69, featuring Superman and Blackhawk. Great Irv Novick and Dick Giordano cover. And I'm just like, I'm not into comics. I'm like, man, it's free. Who doesn't like free? So oh yeah, I'll take it. And I took it home and I read it, and I don't know what it was about it, but it just blew my mind. I'm like, this is awesome. And so I went into school the next day and I found that kid he was trading with. And I'm like, hey, do you have any more of those trading comics? And he's like, yeah, I got some stuff for trade. Why? You got something you want to trade me? And I go, no. And I dug in my pocket and I put like the $2 or $3 I had for lunch money. I said, but could I buy some from you?
Oh, it's like gold if you had cash.
Yeah. And he was like, oh, yeah, sure, let's go. And so we went over to his table and I picked out 4 comics for like the $3 I had. I got Amazing Spider-Man 260, great cover with the Hobgoblin punching Spider-Man through a window and Harry Osborn's ducking for cover. Great classic image. Made me a Friends and DeFalco fan for life. And then the next one was Incredible
Look at
Hulk
this. This is
309, great
so
Mike
good.
Mignola cover, and it was the final issue that Sal Buscema did in his 10-year run on the book. Then I got Hulk
Look at
315,
that. That's where
second
it all
issue
started.
done by
Look at that.
John Byrne of
That's
his
so
short
good,
cover
isn't it?
run.
Isn't it? It's just so nice.
And that's the thing is, all these books I got, they all had to deal with the
That's
covers
awesome.
being awesome.
I
And the
love looking
last
it
one I
over.
got, and this is again another one, just like the Savage She-Hulk issue with Mike Vosberg, I got Strange Tales Volume 2, number 11, featuring Cloak and Dagger and Doctor Strange. It was a split screen cover image by Kevin Nowlan doing Cloak and Dagger and Doctor Strange in two separate images. Interesting thing about that
Yep.
book,
Yep.
that is the first published work of artist Dan Lawless. Now remember, this is 1987 when I picked this up. I started working with Dan in 2017. 30 years later, just like Mike Vosberg. So two of the artists I currently work with
That's so
were
cool.
the guys who were like in the very early stages of me getting into comics, and I work with them now. And so that's where it all begins for me. And ever since then, just 35 years later, oh God, 35 years, that makes you feel old all of a sudden. 35 years later, and suddenly now here I am, and it's been a
Oh,
ride.
we all have such fun journeys too. It's like it's funny how there are a lot of similarities, and it kind of creates us to have this really great connection. Yet a lot of the stuff is just so different, and you know,
Well, the interesting
yeah,
thing I
it's
thought
just
about
so.
my story is all the books I had read previous, both before I was a big fan and right after I started to become one, they were all Marvel, but the one that got me to become a fan was a
It's a
DC
DC
book.
comic. Yeah,
Yeah,
a
I just thought it
DC
was kind of
comic
interesting.
is
Like
that.
all the rest were Marvel stuff, and it's like, but we get DC is the one that hooked me.
And the irony is, and I will say I was kind of an Avengers collector because that's how I landed, but I was more of a big DC Batman collector. So it is funny. It's actually a similar thing. I did collect a lot of Avengers, but it was really almost like the nostalgia of that's what got me into it. Like there was this like 3 4 year run, and that was pretty much what I, and because I remember going to the grocery store and it's like I got my quarter, I'm good to go. Where is it? Where's the next one? And it was like once I got serious in collecting, which was in college, it was like, no, I got to have all those original ones. And I didn't care what kind of condition they were in. I just wanted to have them again. I wanted to relive that
I was
part
the same way
again.
with it. Is they say, you go to a comic store, you go to a show, and you see two different copies. Here's one for $5. It's a little beat up. Here's one that's cherry. It's $20. I'll get the $5 one because that gives me $15 more to go get more comics.
I got to be honest, at this first phase that I was going through, which again, I'm going to give total credit to the Batman movie in 1989. And then my friends saying, well, have you read comic? So yeah, when I was a kid. And it was like, then you got Dark Knight Returns, Killing Joke, Crisis on Infinite Earths, Dark Phoenix Saga. I started like, oh man, this is incredible. And I'd go to this one shop and there'd be all these different prices, even for the same book, which of course were
Yeah.
condition sensitive. But at the time, I didn't even know and I didn't even care. I was like, what's the cheapest one? So my original copies of some of that stuff was like, it was like I got it for like $1.20. It's got a fold, it's got a pencil mark on it, tape tear. I didn't care. I was just in it for the nostalgia, and I was in it for the love of reading stuff that I had missed out on for decades. So it is a great journey. So all right, so that takes us through your interest has been ignited, and it's a big jump to being this massive comic book art collector. So what happens with your personal life and your road in collecting that kind of takes us over the next few
Well, I mean,
years?
I was totally immersed in the stuff. I mean, I'm like you said, just like a sponge, just soaking up as much as I
Mhm.
could. I remember one year, I think I was 17, and my brother, he's 3 years younger than me, so he was like 14, and he wanted to try this game with me. And what happened is my parents, the way the house was set up, is the kitchen used to be in two pieces, and they had all of it brought into one room, and then there was like a spare side room now off to the side, so they just used it for storage. And we put all these long boxes of comics. I must have like at the time like 8 or 9 long boxes of comics at the time. And he said, "Hey, I want to try something with you." I'm like, "What's that?" He goes, "I'm going to go in your comic room. I'm going to shut the door, but I'm going to leave it ajar. I'm going to pull out a comic at random. I'm going to tell you the issue and the title and issue number, and I want you to describe the cover for me." And I
Oh,
remember the first one he did was Iron Man number 212, and I'm telling him like, "Yeah, it's done by this art and this artist. It's a close-up shot of Iron Man's head with a border with all the other Marvel
oh,
characters. It's Marvel 25th anniversary issue." And he did like 5 or 6 others after that. And then he just now it wasn't all the same title. He just at random in
right,
any
right, right.
box. He did and so he did all these different books, and every time just like describing them to a T. And he came out and he looked me in the eye, and I'll never forget this. And he goes, "How in the hell do you keep all that straight in your head?" And
You-
that's how it was. And that knowledge got me my first job working in a comic shop. I was kept going around this guy's shop who I would always buy stuff and hang out and stuff, and customers come in looking for something, and I'm like Mr. Comic Knowledge Encyclopedia over here, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, you want this issue? It's from this issue from this series. It's this cover artist," and I knew all the stuff like with just minimal information. It was like that scene from Clerks where like
right.
somebody comes in asking about a video with like very
Yep.
very vague references, but yet you know
Yep.
what they're talking about. I was like that with the comics, and the guy hired me. He goes, "Because I've seen you in this shop." He goes, "When people come in looking for stuff, you just kind of figure out what they know they want and find it for them." He goes, and so that's part of why I'm hiring you is that impressed me. That got me my first job working at a comic collectible shop.
Are you still very cover driven? Because I know I still am. I mean, you have different. I don't know. Okay, let me explain. I have different tactics. Like, so for me, it was like having different runs, things I would read. But there's still, and again, now, again, I give different phases. So for me now, I've gone full circle with, gaps of on year and off again, on off again. And what happened during the pandemic, of course, is some of the prices of stuff are just so insane. and I actually went to
Well,
some different
I think
shops
part
here.
of the reason prices are so insane isn't just the pandemic, which of course did play a part, but
Right.
I think it's just the fact that a lot of the modern stuff, say the stuff in the last, let's say, 10 years, is
Yeah, yeah,
pretty
yeah.
much all garbage.
Right,
And
right.
people
No.
keep going back to buying the old stuff because that's at least entertaining. That's the stuff that was good, and that's where the quality is. And so people are paying for the quality, and it's making it more expensive to get that stuff.
And at the time, I didn't know all of that. So I went to all these different comic shops in the area and got different stories. No one would help me because I said, "Well, should I grade some of my comics? Like, should I just? I don't know. I don't want to leave some of this money on the table at this point in my life." And of course, that kind of sucks you in a little bit. You only need a little bit of taste, and next thing you know, you're back to being that little kid reading DC presents 69 again. You know, you're just like, I want a little bit taste, and that's when I realized because I started looking at different things, and like you said, I realized like the last at least 10 years or so has pretty much been trash. And it's been even
I
more
mean, name
disappointing
me
than I realized.
a single storyline, a single event, a single new character that has broken through in the last 10 years. Where you're like, wow, that's destined to be a classic. Like the Dark Phoenix saga, that's a
Mm,
classic.
I don't know.
Batman Year One, or Dark Knight Returns, or 10 Nights of the Beast, or A Death in the Family. Superman. You got the whole Reign of the Superman and the Death of Superman. You got all kinds of stories you can name for all these characters. Classic. Spider-Man, the death of Gwen Stacy and the death of the Green Goblin,
Yeah.
classic stories. Everybody knows them. Everybody loves them. They're all-time classics. There is nothing that's come out in the last 10 years that will ever attain that kind of status.
The line in the sand for me
It's not
appears to
about
be
creating a great story now. It's about either pushing narratives or pushing agendas or pushing a certain political view. And that's all it's about now. And you can read it in the work. And if you don't agree with that, it's just like it's automatically just like, I don't want to read. This isn't interesting to me. I don't care what your issues are on a political matter. I just want to read a story where Spider-Man fights the bad guy and wins. That's all I want to. That's what I want. And you're not giving me anything that I can feel that way about.
so for me the line in the sand appears to be around the time of Civil War. Like Civil War seems like it has some legacy. The movie kind of cemented the name of it all, even though it doesn't really reflect this comic book
Yeah,
series
but
as
that
much.
was what was that? Was that two? I think it was 2006 or 2007. So even that's
Right.
more than 10. That's like
Right.
15 years ago. That's
Right. So after that, you start to see this decline, and then I think around 2010 or 11, that's when they try the grant. And maybe tell me what was before this, because to me, because the kids got me the Marvel Unlimited app, so I could catch up on reading some of this stuff and not have to pay for it, which was fine. It appears around 2010, 2011, the Grand Miles Morales experiment, and that appears to be kind of the line of when it
well,
started.
it's
What
not even so
predated
much.
that?
It's not even so much Miles Morales. It's like everything changed. Like around that time, DC did the thing where they retool their entire universe into the New 52, which
New 52 was
people
the same time. Okay. Right.
largely sucked. People didn't like it. That's why 5 years later they had to go back and they did Rebirth.
Right.
And then like Marvel, and around that same time, like 2011, 2012, they had that all new, all different Marvel thing going on where all the books were kind of soft rebooted, and with some big name talents. Like there was a Wolverine book that had Alan Davis, and you had John Romita Jr. doing Captain America, but the stories were just trash. And it's like, this isn't Captain America. This isn't Wolverine. This is not how they are. What are you doing? Why are you ruining these great characters we all love? And I think that's kind of where it does begin, kind of like around like the 2011. That's kind of where you see a sea shift, I think.
Because that's also when Carol Danvers becomes Captain Marvel. They introduce the first version of America Chavez. They start transitioning, right? Some of these characters. This is when they first start. Now they're not quite as, to me, they're not quite as terrible as they quickly become. And I haven't read everything. I'm not going to pretend, but I quickly, I will be honest with you, James. I literally would like start an America Chavez book. I'd only get like 7 pages in because the cringe was so bad I'd have to stop. Then a few days later, I'd get a few more pages in before it hit me again. And then I can see this incredible deterioration where it's just unreadable. And I've shared this with other normies. I've shared this with like people like, can you believe this in the comic book? And I would show them. I was also rereading old stuff I love, like 1990s Ghost Rider was a huge thing for
Oh,
me.
I love
I
the Danny Ketch
love,
Ghost Rider.
oh
I
my
love that.
gosh. And I would show them these. There's an issue where he fights Scarecrow because Captain America let Scarecrow get away. And Scarecrow dies on a pitchfork, and he's just like speared on this pitchfork. It says, "This is America Chavez. This is the comic book I read." And I would show them, this is Miss Marvel, and this is the comic book I read. And you start comparing Ghost Rider to this, and you're like, it's no wonder people are running from this. This stuff is just terrible.
Well, again, it's not even just the politics of it and
No,
the ruination of the characters, but like even the quality of the work itself. Like the
the
stories don't have the resonance that the old
Mhm.
stories did. The artists, I mean, some of these people. I mean, yeah, did you see Unbeatable Squirrel Girl? Did you see that art?
I
Oh my
can't
God, it looked like
I
it
can't
looked fresh off a Tumblr for God's
I
sake.
can't do Squirrel Girl because she beats Thanos. That's all I had to hear and see because I didn't believe it. Looked it up for myself, and I'm like, nope, I don't want any part. No, for me, it was
But I mean, that art, it's like,
it's so bad.
I
Yeah,
got a 10-year-old nephew who could probably draw better than this, and you're
some
a
of it. Yeah,
professional. What are you doing?
I actually tweeted as I'm reading some of this stuff, and this was kind of let me first because I've rebooted Twitter like 3 times, so it's like I would tweet a picture, and there was one of the Miles Morales issues, and I don't know it's not in front of me, and it was like the art and stuff was really good, and then they flashed to him with his family, and it was like juvenile art, and I put up a photo of each page, like one was one page, this is the next page. The artist actually responded to me because I don't understand your point. I'm like, you can't see the difference. But what happened? I said, I'm legitimately asking you, like, what happened? Did you run out of time? Was it a different artist? Like literally, and it was just like this asinine, like I'm the problem that I'm even questioning why the art would be so good up to page 12, but page 13, when you flash to Miles and his family, looks like, you know, not necessarily Nickelodeon, but it was such a downgraded version of art that you and I would
It's
be
like,
like,
what they call
what?
it, that Cal Arts type style.
Yeah, it was, and it was just so soft. And again, this era and now going forward, because I've been trying to read some of the Moon Knight stuff, and I'm like, I can't respect a character who has a body style of a gymnast. Like this isn't Moon Knight. Moon Knight's Batman. It's like it's Moon Knight is the Marvel knockoff of Batman in a lot of ways. Now, I will admit the character in the show at the end of the episode at least looks like that character, but these comic books, Mr. Knight and this 2014 and 2016 series, it's I don't want to say effeminate because you can still tell it's supposed to be a man, but it's so soft. It would be almost like Iceman of the 80s or the 90s. That's like it's a softer character. It's like the physique, it doesn't matter, but Moon Knight is what is he without all of that? It just doesn't make any sense that the industry went this direction. How did you survive all this? You're if you're this much into it and obsessed, how on earth does this turn and then you get through it?
It was a slow process. The last, I'd say about last, I haven't got a mainstream book except for maybe a couple small publisher guys. Like I get the stuff from, was it Warrant Publishing, who are like the new Warren magazines. They do the
Okay.
horror stuff. I get those. I get a couple books from a couple smaller companies like that. But like from like the mainstream big guys, Marvel, DC, Image, Dark Horse, IDW, Boom, I haven't gotten anything in a year and a
No.
half because it's just not. So aside from those few independent guys who aren't big league, all my stuff now is in crowdfunding. That's where I buy my books.
Mm,
I don't buy the mainstream anymore because it's just not worth it. And even if you want
yeah.
to say, oh, those crowdfunded books are so expensive, $25, $30, $50 a pop. I'm like, you know what? I'd rather pay $50 for a 100-page book that I know is being crafted by someone who cares about the work and cares about the reader and cares about creating entertainment than to spend $5 on a flimsy piece of garbage that is going to either insult me or insult the characters, or just try to preach down to me and tell me that I'm a bad person because I have the color of my skin or the gender I am. And I don't need any of that crap. It's why would I waste my money on that? So I'll just save it for the crowdfunding guys. And the ones who are doing good work, support those people. That's what you do. Again, one of my spirit animals that I have in all this is the great Eric July, Young Ripper 59 here
Mm,
on YouTube. And he calls it out. He says, we got to focus on the parallel economy, which is,
yeah.
we have to give up, as much as it hurts. And again, I'll tell you, it did hurt to give up the love you have for these icons and these brands and these franchises you've loved for decades. And you grew up with this stuff. This is the stuff this is stuff that mattered to you. And you have to give it up. It's going to hurt, but you got to give it up. And then you got to support people who actually want to create entertainment, who want to create good quality work, who don't want to preach to you, who aren't pushing an agenda other than just, I want to sell product, some good product. And that's what you got to do. And I totally agree that that's the way to go forward with all of this. Is we can't let our slavish devotion to nostalgia and the things we loved keep us, as he put it best, funding our own oppression, because these people hate us. They don't
Yeah.
like us. I fully believe if there was a way for them to take our money and give us absolutely nothing in return, they would do it wholeheartedly and without any remorse.
I was really. kind of shocked by some of that, and that still goes on. And I don't want to name drop yet because it'll derail our conversation until we get to those names. Because I know how passionate you are about some of them, and I am the same now that I've been blocked by some of them. But it was like the argument doesn't make sense when you're charging, $20 to $25 for a graphic novel, and that's pretty much what many crowdfunders offer you. Like for instance, you can see Billy Tucci's work there up on one of my shelves.
Yeah.
And yeah, Tucci's book was expensive, but it's all of it. What are you talking about? It's this massive omnibus.
My wife backed it. She loved it. She loves
I loved it.
she
I
thinks
just
Billy
took me
Tucci is
back.
probably one of the greatest creators that is not being appreciated today. And
No, he's
she
so
anytime
underrated.
he puts something out, she backs it.
And if they truly have ousted Billy Tucci, they're doing something wrong because he is one of the nicest creators that I had ever met. He
Well, I
was
mean, it's
so generous to me with his
all the people
time.
they've ousted is wrong. I mean, Chuck Dixon, the most prolific
Oh,
writer in
yeah.
comic book
Oof,
history, and you're going to
yeah.
throw him out? This is the guy who's still
Graham
producing
Nolan.
work now. I mean,
Graham Nolan. You kicked out Chuck Dixon and Graham Nolan. Do you
the
realize
creators of
that
Bane. What
this
is wrong with
80s
you?
this 90s era of it, all of your bat titles went through Chuck Dixon. So you basically are ostracizing owner. When people start to realize how absurd it is, it just should shock. Anyway, so I'm not surely I truly understand or convinced how on earth you evolved through living through it, because I could not have been a collector. Because again, I opened this app. I think I can do it on camera. Let me see if I can open this app because I want to show you what I've seen the last few days. It's really been crazy seeing, because the app is an interesting look into their perspective of how skewed they view everything. Let me see if it'll show me, because there was a thing they're doing called popular characters, and they took it down. They did popular characters, and they were all the lady characters, all of
Of
them.
course.
It's like, but it was like it was. Oh, here we go. Here we go. All right, let's see if I can figure out how to do this. I got to hold it up, and then I got to get it to the camera, and then I got to scroll. All right, so She-Hulk, Miss Marvel, Scarlet Witch. With the lights bouncing off of that one. What is this one? Oh, that's America Chavez. Miss America. That's so absurd calling her Miss America. It's so gross. There's Hawkeye, Kate Bishop's Hawkeye. That's Riri Williams.
Ironheart, yeah.
Well, this is Black Widow, but it's Yelena. Believe it, but you're not even allowed to have like Scarlett Johansson's version, Natasha. You have to have the new version. What do
Well,
I
even
have?
Scarlett Johansson doesn't like the Scarlett Johansson version
Yeah,
anymore.
I know. Then you get Storm and Mystique, Monica Rambeau and Elektra, and
Well,
then
shouldn't we be calling Elektra Daredevil because that's what she is?
and
Isn't
Silk.
that what she is now? The new Daredevil.
Yeah, but notice, I mean, popular characters. There's no male characters, so no Spider-Man, Iron Man, Captain America,
Well, the
Hulk.
only thing I might say, and again, I'm not defending them at all. I mean, I'm sure, again, this is all agenda driven, but supposedly March is Women's History Month, so it could be we're doing all women because it's Women's History Month, and so these are the popular women characters because
I
it's
will
Women's
message
History
you.
Month.
I will message you as soon as I see it change. How's that? I will promise I will
That
email you
that
if it
well, yeah,
changes within the next
I
2 weeks.
I'm just saying that that could be the excuse they would use. Well, it's March, it's Women's History Month. What's wrong with you, you sexist bigot? So yeah, that I'll give them that, but I have a feeling that yes, in 2 months' time, 3 months' time, it will all be the same. It won't be any different than it is now. They're not going to go, oh, we got to put up some of the popular characters from the past. Bruce Banner, Hulk, Peter Parker, Spider Man, Steve Rogers, Captain America. You're not going to see any of that up there. They're not going
Yeah,
to. They
but
they
the
don't
irony
care.
was it didn't even make sense because you're rolling out shows and stuff. They didn't put Moon Knight on the list. They didn't put Hawkeye on the male Hawk. They didn't even try to argue. Well, we're trying to also make a buck. It's like money's gone out the window for the message. And I know you've talked about this, so let me take you down that road again because you really spoke to this. As you've seen now with the MCU, and I mean, basically just it exceeded our expectations, I believe, in its financial success and mass appeal to the normies, the merchandising. I mean, it elevated things almost to the point where that's part of the problem, right? That they feel like this is now free reign to ride the clout of the previous 20 something films to do these new TV shows and these new films. Speak
Well,
to that
I just see
financial
it
model at
more.
all.
I just see it more as they sort of strip mined all the best stuff from like the 60s to the 90s, early 90s. They did all the best stuff that was in there and they strip mined it all. And now they just don't know what else to do, and all they're left with is these garbage tier characters that have been created in the last 10 to 15 years that nobody likes, that nobody supports, that no one even really knows who they are or cares, and that's what they're stuck with.
Hmm.
And they don't know what to do, and so they're just like, well, we're just going to forge on with this. It's like, okay, good luck. You're going to need it. I mean, the book's never sold. I don't think you're going to see great results in your TV series or your movies if on it because nobody cares. Nobody cares about Kamala Khan. Nobody cares about Riri Williams. Nobody
The only
cares about
reason
Yelena. If you want the Black Widow, we want Natasha. That's who we want. We don't want the Yelena. We don't care about her. She's nothing. She's nothing special. She's a knockoff. Yeah,
the only
and the thing is, they're all of them. They're all really just knockoffs or repurposed. Like again, like with the Electra, they made her the new Daredevil now, so she's been repurposed. She's an original character. Yes, Electra is original, but you've repurposed her now to be Daredevil, and that's all you've done. You haven't done anything interesting. You haven't created anything new. You just repurposed something, or you just did the next knockoff. Oh well, here's the next Hawkeye. It's Kate Bishop. Okay, so it's a woman. Yeah. Okay. Well, what's great about her? She's a woman. She's a woman archer. Yeah. Well, okay, but why is she? Clint Barton was an interesting character because he started out as a criminal working at Carney's and as a Carney, and then he became a hero, and he suffered hearing loss and all. There's all these things about the character that make him interesting. And what do you have for Kate Bishop for that? She's a woman. She's a woman. She's a woman archer, and she's better than Hawkeye. Oh, why? But because she is. Women are great. And that's all they got. And it's just like that's not going to sell anybody on anything. You need more than that. Again, the great Eric Elias talked to this. He says the problem with these knockoff characters is they're all based solely on their identity. That's all they have for them. They're a woman. Right. They're gay. They're a minority race. That's all they are, and they don't think beyond that. He goes, whereas the white character icons, we know Batman, Superman, Spider-Man, Bruce Banner, Hulk, Steve Rogers, Captain America, Tony Stark, Iron Man. They needed to be more than just, hey, look, we're a white guy with superpowers or whatever. They needed more than that. And they did, and that's why the characters still resonate even to this day. Peter Parker is the most classic one. With great power, there must come great responsibility. He's got his own damn catchphrase, for God's sake, that still resonates to this day. And that's because there was something more to it than just the identity of the character. Oh, look, it's a white male character as a hero. Yeah, we've seen that. What's special about him compared to all the others like that? This is what's special. He's a guy who was selfish at first and then learned the hard way that that you have a social responsibility to society sometimes, and you need to put that ahead of your own selfish desires. And that's where he learns, with great power there must also come great responsibility. There it is. That's why he's an interesting character. That's why we care about him. That's why he still resonates. That's why people still want to read stories about Peter Parker. You don't have any of that with Miles Morales. You don't have any of that with Kamala Khan. You don't have any with any of those characters. Just look, it's the black Hispanic Spider-Man. Look, it's the Muslim brown-skinned Ms. Marvel, and that's all they have. And people can see that, and it doesn't work. And then when they don't like it, instead of going, oh gee, maybe we messed up just focusing on identity and not trying to actually, I don't know, create a story, create actual characters that you can care about. Instead of saying that, they'll just like, oh no, you just don't feel that way because you're a bigot, and that's just it.
The only reason I would disagree with you a little bit is because they announced Phase 4 stuff long before, Endgame was done. And Kevin Feige said, you can expect all these women, almost like he called the shot and said, we're going to have this all women, we're going to introduce, I think he admitted to having either a non-binary or a trans character, homosexual character, a lot of women characters. Basically, you might see an all-women female team. He said all this stuff way back when they were introducing, just how it is, those Comic-Con things where they just show the banner of all those things. So he kind of called his shot and confirmed what we were already seeing at Marvel Comics. We were already seeing all this kind of stuff. So that's the reason I would disagree with you a little bit.
That's what they're left with. They haven't created anything of value in the last 15 years. All they've done is identity, and now that's what they're stuck with when they want to move on from comics into other mediums. What do you got? Well, we got these identity marker characters, and that's what they have to work with.
I don't think it's left with as much as it is they just don't care, right? They're not interested.
They don't care about the old ones. You could still do good stuff with Spider-Man and the Hulk and all the others. You could do all that with them.
I think that all of the Disney stuff,
them not caring about the classic characters and then seeing what they have left, which are just these identity marker characters. I mean, what's to expect? Is like, dude, it's going to fail. It's going to fall flat on its face, and we all see it. I mean, we saw it. Black Widow failed at the box office.
Oh, sure. All these things are terrible.
Barely broke even. The
Eternals. I fell asleep in it.
WandaVision failed. It's just failure after failure for these guys, and it's like they don't learn, anything from it. They don't stop and go, wait a minute, maybe we need to stop doing this stuff and focus on what we did before that made the MCU so great, or that made the comics in the 80s and the 90s so great. Maybe we need to focus on some of that stuff again. They don't ever stop to think that, because, like you said, for them, it's about the message. The message is
and it's
all. The
about
message is all that matters.
and it's about murdering the older franchises and legacy stuff, right? That's what we're seeing across everything, right? Because it's not just Marvel and DC. It's also, we're seeing this with
I don't
I
think
did a
that the
video.
corporations feel that way. The people at the high top mucking them up feel. I don't think they feel that way. For them, it's just a case of it's easier because this is cheaper or whatever, and so they just do it that way. But some of the creative side people, yeah, I definitely feel it's a revenge type of thing. I hate the people who like this stuff. I hate that they love it, so I'm going to destroy it for them, and that's what they do.
And
I mean,
they're
there's no other reason
hiring
to do it than that.
and they're hiring like inexperienced, incompetent creators that don't have even credentials. Like suddenly they're, Gary at Neurotic talked, they cast for directors and writers. And it's like you start to hear, the first time behind the curtain was the creator on WandaVision saying they didn't even know who Mephisto was. Like that was the first thing. Like you're writing this twin
Well,
story, you didn't even know.
that's one of the largest
Right.
examples that
And then
blatant.
two, right. And then we had the Star Wars creator came out and said that she hired writers and they had never watched the original trilogy. And then now we have, one story after another of these different scenarios where, Halo is the current example. I've done some videos with Halo where they're like, oh no, we didn't watch the game. We didn't even talk about the game. And all they did was basically just poke their finger in the eye of anyone. And they're just slapping generic vanilla content on a blank script. I told someone after we talked about this Halo episode on my channel, I said, you could take this script and pay me in a week, and I could take this vanilla script, because I joked that it was basically like Mandalorian, and Baby Yoda is basically a little Asian girl that tags along, and now it's become, now after episode 2, it's more like Book of Boba Fett. They're all interchangeable. I can rewrite this script for you. I can turn it into Stargate for you. Ryan was a guest on the show, and he said, "Yeah, no, you could do Red Dwarf. We could just change it into anything because they're just interchangeable. There's nothing interesting being created in definitely the last 5 years or so. Now, Spider-Man Far From Home was pretty good, but it tapped
No
a
way
lot
home.
more.
Yeah. Well,
No way,
again,
no way home.
that goes back to Eric July's thing. He goes,
Yeah,
that's the only thing that the corporations have learned from all this. All the failures I know, that Black Widow,
yeah,
Shang-Chi, WandaVision, Hawkeye, all those things all failed. And you would think, well, they'd learn a lesson. Oh, this isn't the crap. And then when Spider-Man No Way Home, or was it Venom Let There Be Carnage, those succeed because they're not about the message.
right.
You'd think they would learn and go, oh, that's what works. This is what they want. They don't want the message. They want this over here. And you would figure they would learn, but they're not going to learn that. All they learned is we can put out all this garbage that we want. And then the minute it fails enough and we start to see maybe starting to hurt our bottom line a bit, we'll jangle the keys in front of them. Oh, look, here's Spider-Man No Way Home. Oh, look, here's Venom. Let There Be Carnage. And then they'll go out and blow all their money.
But see, it's two
they're going
different
to take
houses.
the profits they make, and they're going to make more woke garbage with it. And that's
Yeah,
he said, you're funding your own oppression. He goes, it never works both ways. He goes, now again, he put it in terms of left and right politically, which maybe that's true, maybe it's not. But the way he put it is that it's we fund them, they don't fund us.
Right.
We're funding them, and they're going to do what they want. But if we were to put out something, us who don't feel that way, they're not going to buy our books. They're not going to support our movies. They're going to say we're a bunch of bigots, and that's why they don't support us. Oh, these are just a bunch of right-wing bigot Nazis. We're not going to support that. But yet we keep supporting them when they do, quote unquote, the good stuff. And it's like, but they don't see it that way. They don't see it like, oh, we're creating something they enjoy. They see it as, we'll just do this just for now, just to get a few bucks, so then we can make more of the stuff that we really want to make. And we just have to just cut it all and say, it doesn't matter if it's good. It doesn't matter if it hits my nostalgia point. It doesn't matter. We have to cut it loose and focus on something new. Got to build new icons. Got to build new franchises. And that's what we got to do. That's the parallel economy. We got to do it. And it hurts. Like I said, we've grown up with these things. We've loved them for decades, but you got to let that go because they're going to use that love against you. I mean, it's just like the whole thing with the pandemic, with the jab. I mean, I'm not going to name names. I don't want to get them in trouble or anything. But one of my artists works at a job that's a government related job. They don't do the art anymore. They got a real job, and they were told, of course, in the government, you're going to get the jab, or you're going to be fired. Now they don't want it. But they have a family. They got a wife and they got kids. And they're like, what do I do? I mean, I don't want to do this. And I know it's wrong to force me to do this. But I have a family to support. What do I do? And of course, they capitulated and did it. They did the same thing with my wife. Her father has leukemia, and he's been dealing with that, and she wanted to help him, but the hospital said, well, if you help, you have to be double jabbed, and she didn't want to get the shot either. But she wants to help her father. She loves her father. So they used her love of her father as ammunition against her to force her to do something she didn't want to do. They used the artist's love of his family to force him to do something he didn't want to do. And that's what they're doing here in these companies when they put out a Spider-Man No Way Home or a Venom Let There Be Carnage. They're just trying to get us to give them their money so they can continue to oppress us with the woke garbage they're going to be using to produce with the money they make from it. They're using our love of those characters against us,
I
and
will
we got to
say
stop letting them do that.
I will say it's even worse than that, depending on the company. So the examples you're using, I couldn't agree with you more, and that would be the fact that they're still driven mostly by Sony's control. The Disney Marvel, which controls also all of the Star Wars product, didn't have as much control. Like they didn't, they had a lot to say. There's a lot of input. Not going to lie, because there's a lot of overlap with the MCU and stuff like that. So it's almost like saying there's tiers of this is how bad Disney Marvel, the Disney house is. This is how bad Paramount is. Sony's not quite as bad, and I think that this is a real litmus test. See if you agree. Because of what happened with Spider-Man, we know they did reshoots. We know Sam Raimi's not as much of a corporate shill as some of the other directors. So they go back and they retool Doctor Strange, which comes out in a few months, or actually, I guess it'll be next month as of tomorrow. So it'll be like within 35 days or whatever. We'll see. Did they learn anything? Does money matter? This is my big thing. Why do I have hope? Why do I have a white pill? I have a white pill, and we still are probably years away because this crap is being produced years
It
ago. Scripts.
matters. It does
How long
matter.
until the cash costs people jobs? How long until Bob Chapek is like, okay, listen, it ain't working, Bob, you're out? How long until you start seeing,
Well, I
the
mean,
Son Amanat
we're
thing?
seeing some of that now. Like
I know,
DC, what was it
I know,
last year? Had what, like 2 or 3 different bloodbaths.
yeah,
People, and it
I
wasn't
know.
like just cutting books. Which it shocked me. Jim Lee came out and said 25% of their line was losing money, not breaking even or like
No,
making no money,
negative.
losing money, and they were like producing like 60 or 70 books. That's like 15. That's like 15, 16 books that you're putting out that we're losing money every month. What are you doing?
And
And
I don't
there
even
was
know
a
how they're
bloodbath.
doing. I don't even know how
People
they're making money on Batman. I tweeted at Tom King today. Why is there a conversation in your comic book about a puke bucket? And obviously he's not going to respond to me. I might be blocked by now. I don't even know. You're not allowed to ask them questions. So let me ask you this before because we're going to run along on time. I won't get through all my stuff. I got to transition you into comic art. So
okay.
growing into the industry and through it and coming in it, coming out, doing all that. Comic art always seemed hard to get to. It seemed difficult to get to. It seemed there was expensive things like that. How did you get into that element of it? How did you transition into that?
The very first time I ever got a piece of comic art was I wrote a letter in to Valiant Comics. This is the Valiant of the '90s, back
Yes.
back in the heyday when they were like the mid '90s, and it was to Bloodshot. And this is right after they did their was it the Valiant Birthquake, where they brought in a whole bunch of big name talent to start working on the books to generate interest.
There was a lot of good
And
stuff in
they
that
had
too.
Norm Brayfogle was the one who was drawing Bloodshot at the time, and so I wrote in about it, and him and artist Sean Chen would pinch hit. They would go back and forth.
Okay.
Norm would do a couple issues, then Sean would do a couple issues. And they would go back and forth to keep the schedule. And I remember I got a letter printed in issue 33 of Bloodshot. And in the mail, shortly after that letter got printed, I got an original pencil drawing of Bloodshot by Sean Chen.
Hmm.
And that was the first one. And then the next time was about a year later. I was working at a collectible shop, and this guy went to a convention. It was a small show. It was like a one-day event. It wasn't like a huge big deal, just a small
Mhm.
one. And artist Pop Mon was there, and I saw for the first time stacks of art on tables. I'm like, what is all this? And it's like, wow. And so I said, yeah, I'll buy this piece. And I bought a piece from. It was just a close-up shot of the head of was it Spartan from Wildcats.
Okay.
And it's almost like he's got his hand raised like this, and there's energy crackling. And on this side, his face is normal on this side, and on this side, you can see like the robotic stuff, like it's been ripped apart and stuff. Yeah, I think it was a pinup in one of the issues or something. And I bought that, and that's where it started. And then as time has gone on, I just got more and more into it because I started seeing that unlike the comics where the values fluctuate a whole lot more, depending on like the hot, like a book could be hot right now, and then 6 months from now, suddenly now it's not worth anything,
Right.
because the heat's off, and the whole value retention did was a lot more fluctuating in comics. It didn't do that in comic art, and so I got more and more into art, and I started buying stuff off eBay, buying stuff at shows, and just and then I just eventually started talking to people, and so in 2005 I was working at a comic shop, and I got let go. It happens. You get
Sure.
laid off. Things happen. And I started working, took about 6 months, and I started working at the local Goodwill. And let's just say that was not a good fit for me. it just it just didn't. I was there about 3.5 months, and I was gone. And all that time, I'm looking. I'm still doing the comic thing. I'm reading comics. I'm still trying to get comic art, and I'm reading message forums and stuff. And on these forums, I kept seeing people complaining about stuff from dealers and reps, like like how they gouge in the shipping, or they overcharge you on the price by fair market value 3-4 times as much. They lie about what the art is. You'll ask them, say, hey, is there any stat work on this piece? And they'll say no, and then they get it to you, and you find, oh wait, there's a stat pen on here, and they're like, oh yeah, but there's original art underneath. It's okay. Never mind, it isn't what you asked for. They take forever to ship. They take forever to get back
Mhm.
on emails. And I'm looking at all this. I'm like, all my years working retail, this is like retail 101 stuff. I can do this. I can do better than that. Good Lord, how could you wait like days to get back to somebody on an email? Why are you
Right.
overcharging them in shipping? What's wrong with you? And so I got into it, and I asked the wife. I said, would you be okay if I tried to get involved in this? And she said, go for it. To her credit, my wife, I'm a very fortunate man. She's a very understanding woman. I actually met her through comics. That's a whole story in and of itself right there. But
Okay.
she said do it, and at first I started with my own art, but I quickly learned that when you're trying to sell your own work, if you're not getting super high dollar values on them, it's going to be kind of hard to replenish your stock.
Mm.
And then I fell into art repping, and the first person that I did it with is artist Richard Moore, who people, if you ever heard of him, you probably know him from his works, independent creations, Far West and Boneyard are probably his two most
Boneyard.
well-known
Yeah.
works.
Yeah.
And I started selling art for him, and then over time I would just start talking to artists on Facebook or social media. Hey, you're looking for an art rep? You're looking to sell some of your art? And over the time, I've had people come and people go, and I got the guys I'm working with now. But it's just that's how it all happened. It's just because I was just looking at what people were complaining about in the hobby itself, and how it was being done by the people who were the big leaguers. And I just thought I could do better than that, and that's what I've done. Now I've not been super huge in sales, and what I get is a very, very small amount of money. I mean, if you knew how small it was, people would probably look at me and say, why do you even bother doing it? It's like, well, it's not about the money for me. It's about giving back. I mean, comics have given me so much, years of entertainment. You said I was on the stream with Aaron just last weekend, and I showed many of the letters I got printed, so it gave me a voice in the comics. I found my wife through comics. Everything, comics has given me so much. And so I wanted to pass that on. And I figured, what better way than to help some artists who maybe sometimes might need the money themselves sell some of their work so that they can reap the benefits of it, rather than like having them dump it at a con to some guy who's then going to take it and sell it for 5, 6, 7 times what he paid for it. And so I'd like, let the artists get the money because they deserve it, because they're the ones who made all this possible. And so it's just my way of kind of giving back a little something to the industry that's given me so much. Even though, like I said, in current times, it's not been quite so nice to me and others, but I don't hold that against the guys who I work with. Who I can tell you, none of them are going to call you a bigot or a Nazi because you don't agree with them on a political issue. They
Well,
don't.
let's run through the slide a little bit. Look at navigate here. This is your Sequential Treasures page, and
Yeah,
we have links there in the description on the video and stuff. And great stuff. I mean, this is a beautiful GI Joe page, page 11
yes.
and number 18. Beautiful stuff, and that's amazing. And
I remember when Mike Vosberg sent me that, he told me in the email, because he let me know, all my artists usually give me a nod up when they're going to send me some stuff, and he's like, I'm sending you some stuff, including a piece that he called Buried Treasure. And when I got it, and I saw that page, I'm like, oh, I know exactly which one is the Buried Treasure.
Yeah, and this Iron Man, I mean, there's a thing I don't understand, and I know this is where the comic book diehards don't quite get it, because like you were saying about the covers, I have this affinity for covers, and I think there is a normie element to covers, especially with the sports card collectors that have kind of come in with comic books a little bit, because it makes a great decoration. This Iron
Okay.
Man annual 99 page 3 with Iron Man flying at you is a deal at 1200. That should be way more than that. That should be a poster in somebody's office or wall show. That's a beautiful piece. And
Well,
it's
that's
mostly
something
because
I've always used that when I've done stuff like when I'm promoting and everything, like
yeah.
especially during the
Yeah.
holidays. I tell people like comic art is a great gift. It's unique. It's one of a kind, and
Yeah.
it's something that you can enjoy the whole year through. It's something you can hang on your wall, and it's an instant conversation starter. If you had that piece and you had to hang it say on the wall in your living room or something, you had some friends over, they're going to see that like, oh, what's this? Like, oh, that's my original page of comic art from Iron Man. And here
Yeah.
and there it is, instant conversation starter.
Beautiful. And this everybody knows, even if you haven't read it or you don't know about the new stuff or whatever, it really doesn't matter. Jughead and Archie pages, and some of this stuff is so dirt cheap. You're talking about $50, $60. It's such cool stuff.
Well,
And
and
you
that's the more modern stuff, and
yeah, yeah.
that's a little more expensive than the classic what we call classic Archie, like the
Sure.
classic stuff we all know, because that has more crossover appeal. Like the Jughead stuff you saw was Jughead the Hunger, and that's
Yep.
Jughead as a werewolf. So you don't have just fans of Archie who will like it, but horror fans could like that, or
Yeah.
people who like the CW Riverdale
Yeah.
show
Yeah,
might
there's
like
such
that stuff
massive
because it
crossover.
plays up to that whole thing. So you got a bigger cross section, but like I have pages from classic Archie stuff. They're like $20, $20 for a single page of art. I mean,
And
and
there
that's
are
the thing
links
too is my artist and I we don't look to gouge. We're not looking to soak you for every single dime we can get out of you. And we want a fair price. We want to get some nice money for them, but we don't have to like soak you for every single dime the way some of these guys in the business try to do. Which
and
if they can do it, all more power to you guys. If you can get people to pay all those crazy prices, good on you. But I'd rather be the guy who's known as being a fair guy because that's just how I am. I'm not someone who's looking to get over on people. I'm just someone who wants to, put some good art in some hands of people who love it,
and some
and
of
help
the
out the artists at the same time.
and some of the links take you to an eBay auction. This is one. It's Walt Simonson. I think it's original Thor art that was done through a Hero Initiative. It's on eBay. It's currently active. So you're going to get stuff that's in real time from his site. It's imperative that if you're remotely interested in certain characters, certain artists, things like that, is to connect with James's site. We have the link there for you. It's called Sequential Treasures, and
And if you look
it,
right there
it
on the left hand side there, you can see I have everything divvied up into rooms. So
yeah,
if you're looking for a specific character or something, maybe I got or
yep.
a specific company, I got
Sketch
a room for it.
covers. There's sections for everything. Look how beautiful this. Look at this. Look at this Scarlet Witch sketch cover for $75. Dan Lawless. Let me tell you what, folks. If you try to get some of these sketches done, even through shows or different registry events, you're going to pay hundreds of dollars sometimes. I think the cheapest you usually can get might be in the $70 to $90 range, but then you're shipping it away. You don't know when you're going to get it back. You don't look at this. It's already done. You can decide if that's what you want or not for $75. Look how beautiful that is. The colors pop and all that. If you were into all this stuff, Scarlet Witch, and look at this cool. You mentioned Valiant. This is one of their classic characters, Solar, the Man of the Atom, which seems like a great investment because look at the colors and how beautiful that piece is. So
Well, even in the black and whites, they're really nice. Like that
oh,
X Men
sure,
one right
sure,
there
sure.
with Storm. I love the humor in that image. Storm is
Yeah,
looking sexy, but the guy's watching her, and so she throws a rain cloud over his head, saying he needs to cool
yeah,
off. I mean,
right
just it's
there.
hilarious.
A little shower for you. So great site, great stuff to pick from. One of the things that I think you're going to get from someone like James, years of experience and passion is behind it. James, you teased it. I got to go back on this one. I'm going to have to clip this out to put a clip on my Sirius channel because I have a Sirius channel. We talked about possibly doing our interview on there, but we stuck with Pops. But I have a little segment called the 510 stories, which is based on 510, which is May 10th, which is my anniversary with my wife. Now over 20, it'll be 23 years here soon. And you mentioned meeting your wife through comic books, which seems like an incredible thumbnail opportunity that I cannot miss the topic of adding there of, quote, how did James meet his wife through comic books? It just seems like
Okay.
such a great story to share with people. We have to document it, put a pin in it. Tell me how
Okay.
this happened.
Back in 1996, I got my first computer, but I didn't have a credit card at the time, but my brother did. So what we did is we put the AOL because at the time it was all AOL was what you had, and we put AOL on his name on his credit card because you had to pay by card. And what he said is, I'll do the card and pay the card, but then you'll pay for your internet and my internet. So I was paying for both of us out of
Mm,
my own pocket. And I said, all right, fine. And I did that. And because the whole thing when I got online is I wanted to get online, precisely to interact with the pros, because I mean, I knew I could do what it shows, but it shows there's so many other people around, and they're
Right.
hustle and bustle and so much stuff to see, and you don't have time for that. So I thought online would be better because I could spend more time talking to them, maybe just sending emails and stuff. And
All right, let me
that's what
interrupt
I
you.
got on
Let me
for.
let
And
wait,
you remember?
James, let me interrupt you. I want to point out something for all of you nerds at home. Note, James wanted to get on the internet in AOL, not to talk to ladies. The nerd in him only wanted to talk to comic book pros. I just want to make sure we're clear for you nerds out there that don't think
Yes,
there's hope and chance, or you feel alone, or you're isolated. You're talking to two nerds who can
yes,
relate.
I
He
wasn't
wasn't.
looking for a hookup. I
No,
wasn't
he
doing
was
any of
not. He
that.
was
No.
trying to talk comic book just just to get this story of how great this is. I knew it was going to be gold.
So again, if you were around at the time, DC was on AOL. They had the
Yes.
AOL chat room, and then they had the AOL message forums. And sometimes the creators would do specific events, like once a week or once a month in the chat room. There would be a certain one, and then once a month was this one called the John Byrne Wonder Woman chat, because he was the one drawing Wonder Woman at the time. And that's where I first met her, was in the chat room, in the chat of that chat room of people talking, and people were talking about the latest issue. I think it was who is Champion? This character Champion. It was in the book. He was like a hero, but he has real mysterious. Who is this guy? What is he really? And I remember specifically, she goes, "What if he's Steve Trevor?" And I remember I replied right back to her. I'm like, "What a nice twist! I'd never see that coming. I would have guessed that."
Hmm.
And then we just started talking, and this is December 28th of 1996.
That's
And then a
awesome.
few weeks later, it was my birthday, and she emailed me to wish me a happy birthday. A person she had just met a few weeks ago on the internet. And people often have, and then as I was kept talking, and then I said, we should send each other our pictures. And I was a little hesitant at first. I'm like, yeah, I'm not looking like Brad Pitt or George Clooney, so I don't know if I want to send a picture. But she talked me into it, and we sent pictures. And people have always asked me, when did you know she was the one? And I tell them this, and they think I'm joking, but it's only like half joking. I'm like, when I mailed her my picture, and she still talked to me after she got it. That's when I knew she was the one.
It's the home run there, baby. That's the home run. That's
So
nerd. That's nerd heaven for those of you at home who don't know how this
So
works. If we don't
after
get
that,
rejected,
we started talking on
we're
the
like,
phone,
okay,
and I'm sure the
out.
phone companies loved us because we lived on opposite sides of the country. I was
Oh,
living in Pennsylvania at the time,
running up
and
the
she's
bill,
living out on the
baby.
West Coast.
Run up the bill.
Yeah, the phone companies loved us for those several months when we were quote unquote courting. They loved us then. And then back in May 1st of '97, I saved up some money and I got a plane ticket, and I flew out to meet her in person, because I'm like, I've been talking to this person for several months. I got to meet them. And I flew out and I met her, and I spent a week out here with her. And have you ever had an epiphany in your life where like just something just becomes so crystal clear that like nothing can dissuade you from the view you're seeing? That's what this was. The time with her, it just felt so right. I'd never felt so clear about anything in my life. I'm like, I need to be with this person. So I went back home, took care of what I needed to take care of, and 2 months later, on July 1st, I flew out here to be with her, and I moved in with her. I left my family, I left my friends, I left my job,
Awesome.
I left
July 1st.
everything I knew
It's
to
my
be with
birthday.
her.
It's on my birthday. That's awesome.
Yes.
This is
So
awesome.
so so that was, and I moved in with her, and we were together like that for 3 years until July 8th of 2000 when we got married.
It's just the best. It is the
And
best
so
stories.
this
It's
this
your
this
5 pen
year, this
story.
this July coming up is going to be 22 years.
All right. So the date on July, your anniversary is on
July 8th.
July 8th. It's his 0708 story. That is awesome.
Yeah, July 8th of 2000. I tell people I made sure to get married in 2000, so that way no matter what happens, I always know how long I've been married, because I just gotta say, what year is it? Oh, that's how many years.
Yeah, I do that. We got married in '99, so it's that year. It's the year plus one. That's all I have to do. Is okay. It's the year plus one. It's 23. It'll be on 23. So I got
But
you
yeah,
beat
it
right
was,
there. That's
it's just
amazing.
that's how. And again, so I tell people, we didn't need Tinder, we didn't need Match, we didn't need eHarmony or any of the stuff they use today. We're just the OGs of online dating. We just were honest about who we were, and we just talked honestly, and we're open. And here you go.
All right, so let's transition to Aaron Lopresti, because you have this incredible show you do regularly with Aaron. How on earth did you? Well, first off, I'm not going to say I'm surprised that James didn't figure out a way to connect. He's chasing people down in AOL chat rooms in the 1990s for reasons that were different from mine. I'm just going to be honest and transparent with you people. I'm not a great human being. Uh, how did you connect to Aaron, and how did the show kind of come into being?
Okay, well, the show coming into being is something it takes place before Aaron's involved. Now you know I got my YouTube channel, and on it I do things like I do unboxings of the art from the artist. I call it the art of unboxing, so people get to see the art before it's even available for sale. So it's like a preview teaser. I do unboxings when I get crowdfunding comics in, so people can check those out. I do my stream of consciousness thought pieces called sequential thinking.
Oh, they're
You
so
know,
good.
which long form stuff that I talk. It's usually at least an hour or more to talk about stuff.
So good.
And and I did reviews for a little while, but I found I was as I was doing them, like if I did back issues, it was usually from something I already own. So it's like I love it because it's still in my collection. That's why I still have it. So if I love it, and if it was something newer, I probably didn't like it because the new stuff is garbage. So I'm like, not really much interest there in doing reviews when you know the new stuff is going to hate and the old stuff is going to love. It's kind of like, well, where's the mystery in the review? So I didn't do that for very long, but I did do some on there. But one of my artists, Dan Lawless, said to me, he goes, he would like to have seen me do a stream or a video series or something where I talk about the art in my personal collection.
Mm,
And I thought about that. I'm like, that's not a bad idea because I don't really see anybody doing like something serious about doing talking about comic art for a long period of time.
sure, sure.
Yeah, just that they're dedicated to comic art. Like maybe someone will bring in a piece, like one of the artists, like some of the guys who do their streams will show something, but it's not about the comic art. Where this was going to be about comic art, and I like that idea. But I'm like, again, I'm looking at my subscribers, and at the time I've got like 50 or 60. I'm like, yeah, who's going to show up to it? I mean, I'll put it out and like what, two people show up? Who's that's not really very conducive to doing it. And then as I was thinking on it, and I saw Aaron, and I watched some of his live streams, sometimes he would drag out a piece of art and show it. I'm like, so he loves talking comic art. Maybe if I got working with somebody and he's on the insider because he's an artist, so he's an insider, and me, I'm the fan, I'm the aficionado, so I'm the outsider. You get two different perspectives on a piece of art, and we can
Mm.
each bring a piece of art from our personal thing, so you can see two pieces instead of one. And so I approached Aaron with this idea, and rather than just say, I'm the ever loving Aaron Lepresti, the blue eyed idol of millions, and just brushing me off and telling me to go away, he actually was open enough to do it, and we started
Yeah.
doing the show. And that's what we do. I came up with the format. We do a little fun topic at the start. The first one we did, we talked about our top 3 favorite Twilight Zone episodes from the original series, and then we go into our artworks, and then we end it with something we call con stories, because I've done more than a few shows in my time, and I know Aaron's done more than a few shows. So we just talk about some of the craziness or funny or interesting things that we've seen or heard or did at various conventions. So that's the show. And again, it's just something we do for fun. We're not monetizing it. We're not looking to like make big dollars out of it or anything. We're just doing it for fun for the fans, so that they can have something fun to enjoy. And again, that was Dan Lawless's impetus on me doing it myself. Is like he wanted it because he thought it would be something fun. Because we need more fun stuff on the platforms. Just a lot of people
Oh,
talking
absolutely.
a lot of people talking about the problems and talking about the politics and talking about all this stuff that's important. He goes, but we need to have more fun too. And so that's what we do the show for. It's just for fun. We call it Comic Art Convo, and it's on Aaron's channel every month at the end of the month, the last Saturday of every month at 4 p.m. Pacific time, because we're both West Coasters now, me and him. And that's what we do. We do our show, and it's like I said, it's just a lot of fun, and I've really been enjoying myself on them. I haven't. It's probably the most fun I've had doing any video stuff I've done.
Yeah,
Is
it's really
any
it's really
live.
it's really really good stuff, and I couldn't agree more about having positive stuff. I'm not going to abandon. I've kind of taken too much of a break from comic review slash recommendations of stuff. I will tell you this: it's been interesting, and I would encourage Comic Gate people to get more into sharing stuff too, because the normies love it. As I'm a person of faith, and I have this other channel which is more serious. So I've interviewed a couple of Christian musicians in the last few months or whatever, and they'll see the comic books behind. I don't have a different office right now. This is it. And one was a huge Batman collector. And I had an issue I hadn't sold yet. That's where I had to kind of rotate through things up there. He's like, "Can I see that?" We were off air at the moment. I was like, "Hold it up." He's like, "Man, that is so sweet." When we ended up talking about comic books for like additional 20 minutes off the air, and then
Nice.
another one I didn't know he's into bus. So he used his camera and he showed me he has a Spider-Man bust, which is probably like a 1:4 scale or something. It's huge, and I was like, "That is amazing." It is amazing. Here it is. He just his podcast is against the wall. It's got bricks in the background. It looks all formal, whatever. And if you turn the camera, there's this giant Spider-Man sitting there, and it's just like this stuff has really transcended so much, and I really want to see folks embrace. And again, the independent. I'm with you too. And again, the independent stuff for me. Like
This is
the only
Kevin
money
Murphy
I've really
from Riff
spent,
Tracks and
is
Mystery Science
Last
Theater
Ronin, Teenage
3000.
Mutant Turtles,
Hey, this is
the
Martin
Berserker
Fancy
stuff with
Brown,
Keanu
and
Reeves, the
Alan
Boom
Powell
comics,
from
at least that
Song.
interest
Hey,
me.
this
I'm
is
not sure I'm
Christian
into
Kane.
them a lot, but
Let's
a
call
few
him
things
up.
of it, they were pretty cool.
Hello, everybody.
And then it
This
was
is
still like
Irony
some of the
Singleton,
nostalgia.
a.k.a.
Like
T-Dog from
I
The
got that
Walking
Pit comic up
Dead,
there.
and
It's a
you are listening
9.8.
to my
I had to
main
have
man,
Dale's work.
Brandon.
That book is so crucial. It was almost one of those things where in the 90s things were getting so oversaturated, and I was like, and I saw that, and I'm like, golly, art is still so good. And
Well, that was one of my favorite live streams Aaron ever did. Was the one when he had Dale Keown on. That was a great stream.
Dale is a rock star.
He is.
Comic books and otherwise.
He's a literal rock star because he plays
he is.
Japan. He's a literal rock star.
He is a rock star. He is a rock star on multiple levels. I don't even know what to say about that, other than someday maybe I can talk to Dale Keown and we can talk about all sorts of crazy stuff like we're doing right now. James, let's talk about what you think is next for you. Like, how do you continue to see the market going, the industry going, that kind of thing? I know that you talked about it briefly with DC. I didn't look at DC's like kicking everybody out of the office. To me, it's like a cost control thing because I have my son works in art.
But that's the whole point. This is what tells it. And again, the gaslighting you get from so many people online, fans,
right,
and even creators themselves. The one I love is when they drag out that was it the IBC2 Comicron numbers with the bar graph that shows like how in the last several years everything's going up, up, up. And it's like, yeah, that looks like comics are doing great. And they're like, oh, see, comics are doing better than ever. 1.28 billion, we're doing better than ever. I'm like, yeah, if you count in crowdfunding, if you count in young adult, if you count in manga, which is dominating you hand over fist. I mean, a single manga, I forget the name of it, Demon Master or Demon Slayer or something. One manga, and it sold more copies than all of the comics in the Western comic industry in an entire year.
Yeah.
One manga. So that's why you're seeing that growth. When you want to drag all that in, the comics look they're doing great. So yeah, the crowdfunders and the manga people appreciate you championing their success. That's what that is. But if you look beneath those numbers, you find out, Marvel's numbers are down 20%. DC's are down like 9-point-something%, almost 10%. The main leaders of the industry are failing. And, again, their movies are failing, their TV shows are failing, the books are failing. And, and then you got the DC bloodbath, firing editors and people up on the top, all getting canned. You got cutting 25% of your books off because they weren't making any money. You got now you mentioned the whole hot desk thing where like they used to have their offices. They gave up those offices in New York City like 5 or 6 years ago to move all the way out to California, and now boom, they don't even have those offices anymore. Now they're on a hot desk. I mean, it's just crazy to me. And it's where is it going from here? I don't know. I mean, I never thought we'd get to this point. It's like I thought somebody be saying, "Wait, we need to self-correct here before we get too far in," and we're already well past that point.
Yeah, money matters too much. But and I go back to a very simple number, and you're going to be very familiar with this, but a lot of folks don't. There are comic books that are really not worth anything other than the fact that they're rare, and I mean that meaning like it'll be like the Ghost Rider, the 1990s Ghost Rider, but it'll be like issues 88 to 93 or something. So there's only like 8,000 copies of them that were ever created, right? So it's considered rare. But now you have a modern comic
book. It's rare from low distribution because
correct.
It has
low print run, right? So then you have modern comics that only sell 10,000. They're not meant to be rare. Their series are getting canceled, and we're being told that they're being a success story. Sales are never better than another. I'm like, well, hold on.
Well,
if we compare comic book to
part about it,
I'm like,
I was working at comic shops when the speculator bubble popped.
Right.
So I saw all that go down, and I saw the numbers they had after a crater, like around say 98, 99, right around a crater to the bottom after the speculation bubble, they would kill to have those numbers today. Those numbers there were like numbers like you're like, oh God, if you had like 50,000 in sales, like, yeah, this is getting ready to be canceled. Now,
Jim
if you can
Shooter
get a
was
book with
75.
50,000, you're going to be easily in the top 20 with 50,000, or even maybe even the top 15
Yeah,
with 50,000 copies sold.
that's true.
And
You're
then people like, well,
profitable,
want to
right? In your
pop
world
out
bubble.
champagne for
Mhm.
that. Oh, we sold 50,000
I
copies of this
know.
book.
I know, and then I think it's Jim Shooter. Maybe you know the number, but I know it's Jim Shooter. Jim Shooter was 75. If you fell below 75, you're done. It's canceled. And I was shocked when I heard that. Is there an interview with someone talking about it? I don't know how I got it, but I got it in something. It was like 75. I thought to myself, there's like if we did that, apply that to modern comic books and these main two companies, there'd be like six. There'd be like
Yeah, there'd be like
part.
7 books still
Yeah,
being published.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Nothing at DC other than Batman. All of
Well, I mean, and the
DC
thing,
other than like a
like I said,
special
the
one
thing that
issue.
gets me is how people gaslight you on this, and they fail to see why. I mean, yeah, maybe publishing has suffered. The printed page doesn't sell the way it used to. Yes, that's
Sure.
true. Yes, there are multiple choices of entertainment. You got video games you're competing against. You got movies and streaming and all. Yes, that's all true. But you know what else it is, guys? It's you attacking the readers for years on the internet. Social
Yeah.
media has been the bane of Hollywood and the comic book industry because you used to think that these people were decent people, and now you're finding out differently because they're attacking the very people they rely on to pay the bills. I mean, how stupid is that? I mean, imagine me attacking the people that want to buy my artist's art. I mean, how stupid would that be to do?
And
But they do it every single day.
they
I mean,
treat.
again, one of my live streams I did called Sequential Thinking. I did last year. I think it was October of last year. I called it the Comic Commissars. Always political equals constantly insufferable. And the little thumbnail I made for it is I got a screen cap of that famous Kelly Sue DeConnick. I
Oh
call her
boy.
Kelly Sue DeMoronic because she is, of her in that 2017 interview for
Yep.
Sci-Fi Wire where she says, "If you don't like my politics, don't buy my book.
Yep.
Problem solved."
Yeah.
And
So
it's just a shot of her from that with a smug look on her face, and I just put the text right next to her. Being always political makes you constantly insufferable. And she, to me, is the poster child of exactly what is wrong in the industry today with her mentality that she showed there. Because what problem does that solve? Well, it solves the problem of her having to hear criticism of her crappy work, of her crappy behavior online. But other than that, what's it solve? Nothing. Doesn't solve anything for the publishers. The book still ain't selling. Ain't solving any problem for the retailers. They're not able to sell the books. Ain't solving the problem for the readers. They're not getting any entertainment that they want. So whose problems are really solved? And that's the whole thing. But then 2 years later, she did another interview, and this is one that's just started making the rounds. I think last year for some reason it kind of fell under the radar with people. And she goes out and says, "Yeah, I'm really concerned about the industry. It's contracting. Comic shops are closing at a record rate, and bankable names aren't bankable anymore, and creators can't make money doing single issues. They got to wait for trade collections, and I'm really worried about the future of the industry." It's like, oh, the same person that 2 years previous told us, "If you don't like my politics, don't buy my book." Oh, gee, I wonder why things are going so badly.
and
I
that
wonder
clip
why
was
that's happening.
and that clip was pre-pandemic. I go back to, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but I'm not a troublemaker. I don't curse really, and I've done press, so I've met many of these collectors. Dan Slott banned me just because I guess association. Like he just looks at who else you follow, which I follow everybody, even
Well, see,
people
and
like
that's another thing. The whole
right.
thing, what do they call that? Blockchaining. That's the most stupidest thing ever. So I can understand if someone's a pest to you and you want to block them, cool, I get that. You don't want to be bothered with somebody who's just going to come in and hassle you all the time. I can understand that. But you're going to block everybody that follows that person because
Yeah,
they follow them.
right.
That doesn't make any sense. So you're
I
going to
never
block
interacted with Dan
thousands of
Slott.
people who've never interacted
Right.
with you, who've never done anything to
Yeah.
you, and they're now banned just because of who they follow. That
Right.
makes no sense whatsoever.
And Ron Mars banned me because he did a tweet and he used the word awful, and it was weird because of how it was worded. And I don't always try to attribute malice to someone, so I asked, what do you mean? What does it mean by the word awful in quotes? And I got banned for that. He never responded, as far as I know. So it's just weird that these are individuals that
Well,
when you
see,
meet
and the
them,
thing about it
they
is,
don't behave this way. That's what I'm saying. For me, it's like I've met many of these people. I interviewed
so have
Ethan.
I.
I've interviewed Ethan like in 2003, and you've talked to these people, and you've interacted with these people. It's like to your face. I don't really have any issue. I've never really had any major issues, and yet
Well,
you look
it's
at
funny
the
you bring
internet,
up
and it's
Mars because
completely
Mars is a
different.
very special case for me in this case because I was around during the Great Green Lantern debate of the '90s. Remember that Hal versus Kyle?
Yes, Kyle
When
Rayner.
you had Heat, Hal's Emerald attack team, and they wanted to get Dooley and Mars fired from the book and all this other stuff. I was one of the guys who was defending Ron Mars at the
Mhm.
time on
Yeah.
those message forums. And then I met him first in 1999. I met him at a one-day show out here, and I told him, and I said, you know, the next time you're in town, the wife and I want to take you out to dinner on us. You know, and so then 2003 comes along when he's working at CrossGen, and he's there with Jimmy Choon. They both came out for
Mhm.
pardon me, this show. And I told Ryan, I said, hey, that deal still holds true. And he's like, you know, I would let you. He goes, but Steve, the guy who runs the show, is taking me, Jimmy, and Frank Cho out for dinner. And we already agreed. He goes, but I can ask if you can come along. And Steve knew us because, you know, we've been to his show like many times by this point. He knew us as regulars at his show. So he's like, yeah, come on along. And I remember we sat there for hours talking with Jimmy Choon, Ron Mars, and Frank Cho you know, at a pizza joint. And, you know, they asked about us. I told them the story
Yeah.
about how I met the wife and how we fell in love and all that stuff. And they were like hanging. You know, Ron Mars is telling these crazy stories
Yeah.
about stuff he's heard in the industry. And one I'll never forget is he talked about Chris Claremont when he met Sir Ian McKellen during the first X-Men movie.
Yep.
And, you know, he made a beeline for me. He starts talking to him about, like, hey, I'm Chris Claremont, you know, 15-year run on the X-Men, the most successful run of comics ever done. And, you know, he goes, and Ian McKellen's like listening to him. It's like, that's nice. And he's like, you can see like he's trying to get away, but like he's just got him cornered and he can't get away. So Ian's publicist sees this, and she comes over and he goes, Ian, we need you over here. And he's like, oh, okay, very nice meeting you, thank you. And then he walks away, and she goes, and the woman went up to the guy. She went to Ian. She goes, who was that? And he goes, apparently he's the Shakespeare of comics. And Mars did this great like British
Yes.
accent when he did it. So
That's
I
so
mean,
awesome.
yeah, it was great. And then so what happened is me and the wife had got a hotel that night because I figured we were going to take Mars to dinner, so we needed somewhere to stay overnight. And we went back to our hotel, which was the same one Jimmy and Ron and Frank were all at. And Jimmy and Ron, though, were getting ready to leave because they had to head back down to CrossGen on the red eye to get back to work. But Frank was staying overnight. So we checked in, we get our hotel key, we head up to our room. Our room happens to be the one right next to Frank Cho's room. So we open up those doors they have for like the cleaning staff to get in between rooms. We open that up. He comes over, he sat down with us, sat there for like 4 hours just talking with us.
Wow.
That was like the greatest convention experience I'd ever had in my life. And then I see Mars talking to people online like this, to fans like me, you know, to saying the things he says. You know, you're not my customers. You don't matter. You know, you don't
Right.
understand. You're an idiot. You know, Frank Cho came out and blasted Comicsgate. It's like, dude, you're siding with the people who cost you your dream job. You know, one of the people who hates Comicsgate is Greg Rucka, who cost Frank Cho the job on the Wonder Woman covers, which, again, from talking with him in 2003, I knew that was his dream. He
It
wanted
was
to
the
draw
dream job.
Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
And he cost him his dream job, and yet he sides with that guy over me, over my wife, over all the people who supported his art.
It's so strange.
You know, and so it makes you wonder sometimes when you think back on it. It's like, were they secretly laughing at me the whole time we were telling those stories about falling in love? Were they thinking like, God, what losers these people are? Because you can't help but wonder.
I think times changed. I just think times change, and it's just different now. So.
Yeah.